Now, you mentioned it earlier that kind of the language services was kind of running production AI and machine learning and neural networking at scale long before we get into this generative AI stuff that we all now love so much. I think I loved your phrase too, that, language is the middle name of an LLM. What lessons from this category should other, leaders and other verticals be paying attention to as they go and build out these, models for their industries?
That's a great question. I think that, I mentioned earlier on, I think what I've found, and it's actually, it's not a question that, or an answer rather, that is particularly profound, but it's actually, I found it to be true as technology has evolved over the last 20 years in this area, which is a piece of technology could be really, really impactful, but it's the operationalization of that technology within a really complex environment that becomes impactful to a business. So there's the potential, and then there's but how is this really going to get used at scale? And I think that for me, living in this industry for more than 10 years, you sort of see that the companies and enterprises that do well in harnessing that technology do so by really thinking about where does it fit into our process, and how can we utilize it in a way and at scale that's going to work for us. And it sounds really simple and really obvious, but it's actually very true. And if you don't really embrace that, then it's gonna really be just a potentially beneficial thing as opposed to a really beneficial thing to your business.
Yeah, it's that tsunami, right? That of almost any AI project I see is, you're going to get what you ask for. You better be ready for it.
You better be ready for it for sure.
Yeah. Now, I look at AI, and I think 2 years ago we were dealing with like an eighth grader. It seemed like, I think as early as last year they were probably late high school. Now we're into college, postgraduate work. I think the AIs are just getting so much better and so much faster. In 5 years, what does this look like for him, in this multilingual world of yours?
Yeah, I think that you're going to continue to see the models get better. I think they're always going to. I think that many companies are going to understand that sounding generic is not going to be right for them. It's not going to differentiate them. So, very kind of traditional way of looking at, how are we perceived as a brand. So, being able to take the potential of being able to engage with your client, your being able to engage with your buyers across the world in language that is meaningful and represents you is still going to be important. So you're still going to want to train it to sound like your brand, but you're going to be able to do that across 200 plus languages with confidence. And then it's going to be about really how do you manage that content? How do you make sure that content at source is correct, is written in a way that is able to be translated effectively? It's, by the way, something that's been very important to the translation industry for many years. Actually, there's things at both ends of the translation process which have been really hard to influence, but AI is enabling us to start to influence those things. So one of them is, how do you make content at source better? How do you make which is traditionally English, right? How do you make the English created in a way that's going to actually be easier to translate and be represented across all these other languages? And I see that the next phase of this in AI is going to be the generative English approach, or the source language approach. Let's not even presume it'll be English in the future, but can that source language, the paragraph that really describes your product, can it be generated in a way that represents you, that doesn't sound generic, and can be easily then adapted for other markets, is going to be really critical. And at the other end of it, I actually think the performance of content and the way that that's measured and then fed back into the AI so that it can make improvements potentially automatically, right? Oh, this particular marketing campaign with this ad copy is not really working for me. I'm already seeing that as an AI, I'm already seeing as an agent that the click-through rate is terrible. I'm going to rethink about how that copy looks in that language, republish it out, and then see if the performance improves. And I think you're going to see these sort of living systems that are able to kind of make those kind of changes on your behalf, which is going to be incredible, right?